All eyes are on Washington this morning, where President Trump is scheduled to make a primetime address from the White House. The president hinted yesterday at revisiting conspiracy theories surrounding his 2020 loss to President Joe Biden, but saying tonight's speech would contain, quote, really big news and a very big announcement. Let's get right on out to News Nation Washington correspondent Corey Smith, who's outside the White House for us. I mean, Corey, this address comes in the middle of an unpopular conflict and ahead of the critical midterm elections. Have you got any more clues as to what tonight might be about?
Yeah, Marky, we've heard drips and drabs here and there over the last few days. But as you mentioned, the president is expected to touch on a number of topics, but chief among them is election integrity. For the last few days, if you've heard him talk, he's been teasing this primetime address as big news. We also expect him to discuss newly declassified intelligence reports related to allegations of foreign meddling back in the 2020 election. Now, look, President Trump has repeatedly made unfounded claims of widespread voter fraud in the 2020 presidential election, but his grievance sits at the heart of the Save America Act, which we certainly expect him to mention tonight. As you know, he's currently trying to ram it through Congress, even if it threatens to derail his own agenda, especially in a pivotal election year. It's already got in the way of bipartisan legislation, and it could be the deal breaker for the $95 billion reconciliation package the GOP is trying to push over the finish line. But the president really putting on a full court press here. He's held multiple meetings with GOP lawmakers, and as you see here, he even sent the vice president to the Hill to rally Republicans Wednesday afternoon.
The reason I wanted to come here today is just to give a message of unity to my fellow Republicans. We've accomplished a lot together over the last year and a half, but we've got to stick together and accomplish at least one very big thing for the American people, which is the president's priority, the White House's priority, the entire Trump administration's priority is to actually get the Save America Act passed.
Now, you see House Speaker Mike Johnson standing next to the VP. Johnson says the plan is to push that bill out of committee today and have it passed in the House by next week. But it does face an uphill battle in the Senate. So, Marky, a tight timeline for a central issue President Trump faces in a crucial election year. We'll see what he says later tonight from the East Room.
Yeah, I know he was saying he was saving a lot of it for the moment tonight, so we'll see what all he has in store. But Iran is also pretty likely to come up as the U.S. intensifies strikes on a daily point right now. What are you learning there, Corey?
Well, Marky, it's clear the president continues to turn up the volume, to steal a phrase from the vice president. This morning, the U.S. fired on a ship it says was trying to break its blockade on Iranian ports in the Strait of Hormuz, and the attacks have expanded into northern Iran. Meanwhile, Tehran retaliating with pre-dawn strikes of its own on Bahrain, Kuwait, and Jordan. So again, a lot of potential topics for the president tonight. And the White House press secretary tells us, despite the reporting that is out there, no one truly knows what the president will say, except for the president. So we will have to be watching. Marky?
Okay, we're waiting on the edge of our seats. Corey Smith, thank you. For more, let me bring in News Nation political contributor Denise Grace Gitsom. Denise, good morning to you, my friend. Let me just pull up this Politico headline that caught our eye. And the headline of it says, scared you-know-what list. Republicans brace for Trump's primetime speech. As a Republican, are you hoping that he does or doesn't relitigate 2020?
I hope he focuses on the true interest of Americans, which is transparency. You know, this is less about relitigation and more about whether Americans deserve to know the truth. And I think if he focuses on those talking points, which I'm not sure that he will, which is why you saw that headline, then he's going to be able to get that point across. And I think most Americans who are just fair Americans who want to actually know the truth and get to the bottom of what happened, if anything in fact happened, are going to say, hey, you know what? Let's see the evidence. If you've got evidence, show it to us.
Yeah. And speaking of that, just in the 6 years since the election, no one has ever found any evidence of votes or voting machines being manipulated to commit widespread fraud. But it's interesting, the president believes 2016 and 2024 were, one fair and square. What more do people need to put those conspiracies to rest, do you think?
They need more transparency. Honestly, Marky, I mean, I feel like everyone feels in America, I live outside of the Beltway, I live in California, and I feel in conversations with my friends, everyone sort of feels like folks in Washington are playing this chess game and we're all pawns. And I think the more that we're open and willing to share all the evidence, things that the Biden administration knew and things that the Trump administration now knows and knew before, anytime we're able to bring evidence to support our allegations, our beliefs that there is, foreign interference, which remember, Democrats actually believed as well when President Trump first got in 2016. There's been allegations on both sides of the aisle about election interference by foreign entities and, by Republicans in California who've recently seen a lot of inconsistencies in our voting as well. So, again, transparency is always a winning issue, and I think that as long as the president stays on that issue, which, again, I'm not sure that he will, we should be able to get a point across.
He's known to have some surprises up his sleeve when he takes to the microphone. You think this is more about pushing the SAVE Act for him later tonight, whatever it is that he has in store?
Yes. He said that is priority. He has not minced words about it. He used every opportunity, even a conversation about Lindsey Graham, which I thought was not the best opportunity to use to talk about his legislative priorities. My concern is that he keeps pushing the Save America Act, which I completely believe in, and 80% of Americans believe we should have voter ID. But what I'm concerned about is he's not really addressing what Americans care about the most, which is the economy, their own well-being. And I'm afraid that when we focus so many times on the wrong issues, we as Republicans tend to get off course and not address the real needs of American people.
Yeah, let me talk a bit more about affordability. To your point, it's top of mind for many, but it is every election. I mean, you go back to the famous line, it's the economy, stupid. But the president continues to make light of those concerns. Let me play a quick soundbite for you here.
I had my first news conference the day after I took office, and they said, affordability, affordability. They go, that's a fake word that they use. They cause the affordability problem. It's called high prices.
How do you think that that's landing with voters just, 3 months out from the midterms, Denise?
Yeah, with a thud. I mean, it's not working at all. It is always about the economy. What we're seeing on the left with the rise of socialism, I don't even think that most of the kids who are talking about socialism, champion socialism, even understand what that means. If they did, there's no way they would support it. There's no way they could possibly think this would better their lives. And yet they do, because what they're saying is this system, the way it's working right now, it's not working for us. And that's a legitimate concern, but it's one that requires a conversation about what economic forces, what can we put into place federally from a policy level to regulatory level to actually address the issue that we're dealing with, which is that Americans feel like they're worse off now than they were when Trump came in.
With just 3 months left, you think the White House has time to turn things around before people head to the polls? Especially with the war ratcheting up.
Every election is about the two people on the ballot, right? Yes, of course, there are macro elements that feed into your decision making. I'm not sure that people can get over their dislike of Trump. That's the biggest issue. I think Trump is the greatest liability in this election. If you don't like Trump, you're going to come out and support anyone who says they're against him, regardless of their policies. And so that's not going to change in 3 months. If the economy gets a huge upswing, we've seen his approval numbers go up a bit with a drop of gas prices. Anything is possible. That real decision-making process starts after Labor Day, so we've got to keep our eyes peeled. This is going to be a very close election.
And things can change very quickly, as you and I both know. Denise Grace Gitsum, thank you so much, my friend. We'll check back in just a bit. Now to this, the twists and turns of this conflict are again sending gas prices higher. That risks reigniting inflation after data shows it slowed down last month. It's no doubt a huge political risk with the midterms coming up, as Denise and I were just talking about, but the president believes one solution to the problem can actually be found in the United States. News Nation Live weekend anchor Alicia Nieves is on Wall Street for us. Alicia, good morning to you. So what details can you reveal to us about the president's new plan here?
Yeah, good morning, Mark. As you kind of point out, the president thinks potentially the solution lies here at home, pointing to energy infrastructure here in the United States, pipelines in Texas and Alaska as possible solutions. We're also hearing about some pipelines overseas that could be this interim solution, the Iraq-Syrian oil pipeline being one of them. Here's what the president told Fox News about domestic changes in shipping throughout while the Strait of Hormuz is slowed down.
It's open if people want to go through it. We're not opening it for Iran. That's the only one it's closed for. It's closed for Iran, both in and out, but it's open now. A lot of things have happened, Trey, in the last few months. Pipelines are being built. We're coming up with great alternatives, including Texas, including Alaska.